Hi, I'm Vincent the Mister, Principal Software Engineer at Red Hat, and I'm gonna show you a little demo of OpenShift Pipelines. OpenShift Pipeline is a cloud-native CI/CD system on top of uh, OpenShift, and it's based on Tecton CD, which is the same for Kubernetes. It's our upstream project, and we are shipping it and supporting it soon on Red Hat OpenShift. It's available as an operator, so you can easily install it. I already went ahead and installed it on my cluster. So let's just dig into our demo now. So our demo is gonna deploy the Sprint Pet Clinic project on our cluster using Tecton CD pipeline. But first, for that, we need to create our projects and create the pipeline, the service account that's gonna allow us to build the image. The service account needs some privileged roles because it needs privileged containers to build a container image. This is the same as OpenShift build config, which is the built-in way of doing this in OpenShift. This will evolve, and in the future you will not need any privileged container to build it, because BuildI is supposed to work on those cases. All right, so now that we have our project setup, I'm just gonna also make sure that kubectl is targeting the same. So now we want to first create our application. So our application is an image stream, the deployment config that's gonna depend on this image stream, and the service to expose it. So let's just create it using OC apply. And so as you can see now on your cluster, the project demo is there. There's a pet clinic, nothing is running, but it's exposed and already open. But the application is not available because we don't have any images. Alright, so let's, and if we look into our workloads, we don't have any pods running either. So let's get back to our editor. Now, for defining our pipeline, we're going to define a pipeline which is made of two tasks. One is going to build the image using S2I, and one is going to deploy this image on the current running cluster using OpenShift client. So we need to create the tasks. So the first task we're going to need is an OpenShift client, an OpenShift client task that's going to allow us to do an OC something, and in that case OC rollout something. So let's create this one, task OpenShift client, and also the second one is the S2I Java 8. So this one is a little bit more complex. We will need to have as an input the resource, the Git resource, which is gonna allow the task to get the actual source code of our application, some parameters that allows us to customize what build does or what S2I does, and an output resource, which is the image. This allows us to pass the reference of the image at runtime. And our task for building the project is composed of 3 steps. One step is to use S2I, the S2I binary, to generate a Docker file based on our OpenShift JDK 18 S2I image. Then it's gonna use buildah to build the image, and also buildah to push that image. So let's also create this task. Now you can see which tasks are available on your cluster using OC, but we also have focused CLI called TKN, which allows you to see more. I'll dig into that a little bit later. But let's get back on our pipeline, on our definitions. So now we need to define the pipeline, and the pipeline is made of two things: the resources it needs, and it needs to be bound to, and the tasks it's gonna use. So we need two resources which are required for the S2I Java 8 task. One is the source code, pipeline resource of type Git, and the image, which is pipeline resource of type image. And so we can see we have our build task and our deploy tasks. Our build tasks is referring the S2I Java 8 task we defined earlier. We don't want to verify the TLS because we're using the internal image registry, and we are saying I want to use the app-get resource defined there as the source resource defined in the task. Same for the output. And the deploy one is gonna referring to OpenShift client. We are gonna do a rollout latest Spring Pet Clinic, which is gonna tell the application Spring Pet Clinic to use the latest tag of the image stream. And we also specify that we want to run this after build, so it's gonna deploy is gonna execute only once the build tasks is done. So let's create that pipeline. Sorry. All right, so now we also have a pipeline, and as I said, I can list the pipeline and the tasks using either OC or TKN. The thing that comes with TKN is, for example, when you list the tasks or the pipeline instead, you can see the last time it ran and if you had duration, status, etc. So for running a pipeline, you would need to create a pipeline. This would require us to define a YAML. But yeah, first, I almost forgot that we also need to define the actual pipeline resources that we are going to bind to our pipeline. So as we saw earlier, we need two resources. One is the Git resource, one is the image resource. So we define two. One is the image resource, which is gonna refer to our internal registry, which is the image stream on our project, and the Git resource, which refers to the upstream project Spring Pet Clinic. So let's create those two. So now that we have all what we need to run the pipeline, we can either define a YAML or we can use TKN. So that's TP here. So let's just use TKN for that. Let's also look a bit at the command. So we're going to use TKN pipeline start to say I want to start this pipeline being the one we define, and -r means resource and -s means service account. So we are saying I want to use the Pet Clinic resource as app-get in my pipeline definition, and the Pet Clinic image as app image in my pipeline definition, and I want to use the pipeline service account to have the correct rights. So if I create that, it's gonna start a pipeline. It's gonna create a new pipeline with a generate a name based on the name of the pipeline and some random suffix. And it's also telling me, hey, this is what you need to do to see the logs. So I can see the logs. It's gonna pull the images and start a container, so it can take a little bit of time, but as we can see, it's already starting. So it's gonna show us the tasks and the steps logs of each task, and it's also gonna show us the internal one, like image digests, export, generate, or git source pet clinic are internal steps that Tecton uses for internal purposes. So right now we can see that it did the first step of our build, and now it's doing the second, so it's named build. So you can see this is the task name and this is the step name, and we add generate there. So now it's doing a Docker build. In a few seconds you will see Maven starting, and it's gonna download the world. So let's also see what it does behind the scene. So our pipeline run it's currently running, and for each pipeline, for each task in defining our pipeline, it's gonna create a task run. So if we look at task run lists, we can see that it's actually running. We can also ask for the logs and watch them live, same way we do in the on the left pad. Another way to look at the logs, if for example, if I see the pipeline, I'm watching the pipeline and I'm saying, yeah, I want to see the logs of the pipeline, and well, I'm not sure, I don't remember exactly how it's called. I can just tab, write pipeline logs -f, and it's going to, sorry for the background noise, it's going to allow us to filter, and then it's going to show us which pipeline run are defined for this one, and once you do that, it's going to show the same as on the opposite side. So the build is almost done, so let's while we are waiting for it, let's switch to the browser and look at the pods. And as you can see, we can see the pod here too. We can, as what we would do for other OpenShift workloads, we can also look at the logs and see what's happening, and it's showing us the same as usual. So let's go back in our editor. Now it's on the next step. It's gonna push the image on the register, on the internal registry. It should be quick, as we are almost local. So now that is done, we can look at the task runs, and we can see that there's one task run that just finished, which is the one we were looking at. It started 3 minutes ago, so it took about 3 minutes, and it succeeded. So now we are looking at a new one, and we can also look at those logs. Well, it went too quick. So we can see that our pipeline run is done. So now if I'm listing the pipeline run, I would see that it succeeded, and if I'm looking at my pipelines, I can see that the last run succeeded. Let's make sure it succeeds by looking at our brother, and we can see that there is the deploy containers, so which are made of, or which are coming from our deployment config here. And the application is starting, the container are creating, so it's slowly starting. And so in a few seconds or minutes, I'm not sure exactly how much time it takes, we should see the application live. Alright, I think it's started. Let's just refresh this one, and I know it's can take a little bit of time. Yeah, it's still not ready. I was a bit too optimistic. Alright, while we are waiting for it to actually start, even though it's deployed. Let's also look at a bit more commands. So if you look at pipeline, you can describe a pipeline, and it's gonna I need to get back at my name like this, and you can see what resources it needs, what task it needs, and when after what it runs after, and also the run. And let's say I want to start it again, but I don't want to have to pass again the same. I just want to rerun the pipeline based on a new change. I can just do a dash last, and it's gonna use the latest, the last flags we used before, and I forgot to put the name, and I put the wrong name. So let's do that. And it's gonna ask me either it's gonna I think there's a bug, but that's something I wanted to show after. Yeah, it's gonna say, okay, I want which there's an interactive mode to task to pipeline start, which asks you for the resources you want, and it's filtered them by type. So right now I just have one resource of type git, so this is the only one, but as for other things I can filter, and and alright, it's just the display went weird. And if I do that, well, it's starting a new one, and we should see the logs going if I can select. Alright, let's get back there. We can see there's our application running, and our task also running. And yeah, I can see my application running now. Also, the containers are still there, the build one, so you can get back at them and look at the logs. Same here. Now if I'm doing pipeline logs, and I select my pet deploy pipeline, I have now two pipelines run, so two execution of the pipeline, one which is still running, and the initial one. And so I can just get back at the old execution and do that. And yeah, that's all for today. Thank you very much for watching.